Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Craft Beer Corner. Today we are going to be doing a review of the Sweetwater Brewing Company's Spring Fever Sampler Pack. This is the 2019 release and this is out now. So if you're familiar with Sweetwater Brewing, they're based in Georgia and they release seasonally sampler packs. So you get multiple different styles in the same 12-pack case. And they, much like Sam Adams does sampler packs, they'll always have their core Boston Lager in every one of their samplers. Sweetwater has a similar formula. So very often, like the first one we're going to sample here today is the Extra Pale Ale, their 420. They have a few like that. Their IPA is also very popular, and they put that in the majority of their samplers. So we're going to go ahead and get this started with the 420 Extra Pale Ale by Sweetwater. So let's go ahead and get this poured in the glass. Yeah, right away you can see that beautiful golden color and very, very effervescent. And it really has a nice head. Now, it's possible that the head blew up because I poured a little aggressively midway there. But in my experience, that's really average for how their beers pour. They do have a nice, tightly formed head, which is really nice. Not unexpected on a pale ale. So let's go ahead and give this a sniff. Okay, yep. Get a lot of floral accents. It's very floral and slightly citrusy. Getting some lemon and definitely fresh floral accents. Maybe lemongrass, you could make an argument. There's a little bit of a hop aroma, but it's not overly hoppy, which again, you'd expect from an EPA, but that's the overarching characteristics that are coming through on the head. Let's go ahead and give this a sip and see what this is about. Okay, yeah, that's a good beer. For an extra pale ale, which really, this is not that dissimilar in style to an ESB, an English Special Bitter. It's related to pale ales, which tend to be a little more heavily hopped. This is just an extra pale ale. As you can see, I'll see if I can hold it up, get a little clearer look at this. It's got a very nice classic golden color. Not dissimilar to almost a Pilsner color that you would expect, except this is an ale, but in this case, it's a pale ale. So very beautiful color, kind of what you want to see with a pale ale. Had a wonderful nose. Really, as I take that first sip and I let it linger a bit because there's always going to be complexity with hops. So I'm just going to take one more sip before I really start to describe what I'm tasting and experiencing here. Okay, out of the gate, it's a very refreshing beer. If you're out doing yard work on a hot summer's day, this would be a go-to beer if you're a hophead, because it's not so hoppy that it feels inappropriate for hot weather, but you still get that nice kiss of bitter from the hops, and it's very light. It's a very light-bodied beer. It's very refreshing. This is almost a perfect case example, a quintessential extra pale ale. They delivered exactly as advertised. This is a beer I would go to really anytime for any occasion. Hot weather, cold weather, it doesn't matter. This is going to be a good beer. You're not going to be disappointed. Okay, for the second beer in the Sweetwater Spring Release Sampler Pack we're going to be trying is another one that is one of their kind of staple beers they have in their sampler packs. I've had probably 9-10 different sampler packs they've put out over the years, and if I'm not mistaken, I'm pretty sure that this is kind of their Sam Adams Boston Lager of their sampler packs. It's their de facto, you get one in every sampler with every changing of the season, which is just as well. Admittedly, I'm a hophead, I love IPAs, so anytime I can get an IPA in a sampler pack, I'm not going to be complaining. But let's go ahead and get this poured in the glass. and see what this is about. Okay, first pour. We can see it's a nice, lighter, but still a golden color IPA. Give it a sniff. Yeah, you can smell the hops right out of the gate. It's got a nice nose. It's very crisp, slight citrusy, just a twinge of pine. But the dominating smell here is citrus, a little bit of floral, but it's predominantly citrus. So let's go ahead and give this a taste and see what we think. Okay, the very first thing I notice about this IPA is that it's got a really nice body for an IPA, and this is not a double IPA, it's just a standard IPA, so there's not, you know, double the amount of normal fermentables in the batch. But this is a good beer. It's got a nice mouthfeel, it's got a nice body to it, it's nice and light. But it really does. It has a nice body to it, which you don't often get with every IPA, particularly that's not a double. The extra fermentables in there that make them go into the Imperial, double, triple IPA, whatever any brewer wants to term it. Those do have a lot to do with how much body you get and how much mouthfeel there is. And this is actually, for a standard IPA, this is one of the better ones in terms of mouthfeel and body. Now, it does have your classic IPA bitters, but this is not an overtly bitter IPA. This is much, much tamer than, say, Sierra Nevada Torpedo or Stone, even their normal IPA, and certainly many of the variants. It's not a Ruination. It's nothing like that. Not on that territory. This is a very approachable IPA for my money. You do get the bitters and it lingers. It's got a really, really nice lingering bitter, but it's not pungent. It doesn't kick you in the teeth with bitter. It's just a kiss of hops to let you know it's there, that extra hoppy kick that just lingers and slowly dissipates on the back end. Gonna give it one more sip just to see what else jumps out at me. I'm sorry, I can't help myself. I love IPAs. Yeah, it's a solid beer. It's a very good beer. This is one that, to me, could rather be one of your go-to IPAs, kind of an everyday, every occasion IPA, because it's not super heavy. It's lighter in terms of the IPA and the hop-forward character of most IPAs. It's very balanced. This is one you could pretty much drink anytime. A hot summer's day would be ideal. I can picture cutting the grass, and then coming and grabbing one of these as your reward for finishing your chore. Yeah, very good IPA. We'll come to the end, as always, and we'll get them balanced and ranked on our scale. But let's go ahead and move on to the next one. Okay, so for our third beer in the Sweetwater sampler pack, we're going to go to the G13 IPA. This one is a new IPA that Sweetwater has out. It is new this year to the sampler pack. I don't know if they sell this outside of the sampler, if you can buy it individually in 6 or 12 packs, but it does come in the spring sampler pack. So let's go ahead and give this a pour. Yeah, it's got a nice, beautiful golden color to it. Very, looks very, very light gold. Yeah, it's got an interesting aroma. Compared to Sweetwater's standard IPA, this smells a lot more fruity up front. Really getting heavy fruit accents. But there's also this very clearly astringent hop aroma to it. It smells kind of like an earthy hop that's been added in here. There could be multiple hops, but it definitely gives off that earthy hint and just a twinge of pine. So let's go ahead and give this a sip. before, though. You can see this head. It's got looser bubbles, but it's got a nice head and it's holding. So far so good. Let's see what it's about. Oh yeah, that's really good. Gonna let it sit here in my palate while I think about it. The nose that you get up front when you first take that sniff is a little deceiving because it smells very, very fruity up front. As I said, it definitely smells very fruity, but it does have that kind of astringent, slight pine, more earthy hop overtone to the aroma, and certainly that is readily apparent as soon as you sip it. Yeah, it's got a very strong, very earthy and little twinge of pine. I'd say it's about 75% kind of earthy hop notes to 25% pine, but it's very well balanced. And I'm not getting much fruit at all in the flavor profile, which is interesting considering the aroma, but it's kind of an interesting IPA here. This is very good. I would recommend this one, and even after a few sips, you can see the head is starting to recede a little bit, probably from the natural oils in my mustache as it touched as I was sipping, but it's still holding there pretty well. Overall, good beer. We'll go through and give the full rating at the end and see where it stacks up. Let's move on to our final beer in this sampler pack. Okay, so the final beer in the Spring Sweetwater sampler pack is the Peach, Love, and Happiness, which is a peach Berliner Weisse, which is a sour. It's a style that there's some fuzziness on the history of how it came into being, but nonetheless, it's not dissimilar to a Gose or a Gueuze, depending on which region, if you're talking German, Belgian, French. But at any rate, we're going to go ahead and get this poured right in the glass, see what this is about. Okay. Now, that produced a pretty big head, though I think it was probably from my sloshing into the glass, and it's already starting to dissipate, though the foam in the head does look like it's much tighter packed bubbles in there, so it might take a little bit to completely disappear. It looks pretty much like a Berliner Weisse should. It's mostly clear with just a slight cloudy tinge. Let's give it a sniff. Okay, yeah, out of the gate, you can smell the peach in there and you can smell the sour. So this is a sour style of beer. If you're not into sours, you probably wouldn't like it, but let's go ahead and give it a taste. Okay, so yeah, it's got a very distinct, especially up front, the peach really comes through. It's really nice, it's very fruity. The sour in and of itself, it's a classic Berliner Weisse. It doesn't have that slightly salty back of a Gose, which is quite common. It's part of the style. It came from a specific region in Germany that had a very salty river, and the salt content, the saline content in the water that was used to brew is why that has a salty back. Modern beers, they just add specific salts. Himalayan salts are very common if you're brewing a Gose without a salt water source. But this, as a Berliner Weisse, it's very classic. It's got a nice sour. It's not overtly sour. It almost leans more on the tart side of things. Peach is very nice and upfront. And then it kind of finishes with this nice, not dissimilar to Saison or a wild ale. It's got kind of some hay and biscuit and crusty. It's not barnyard. It doesn't have any funk like you might expect with a Brettanomyces souring. But it does have a nice earthy kind of hay and biscuity and breadcrumby kind of finish. And as you can see, as we were just talking here, maybe a minute or two, the head is nearly completely gone, which is indicative of the style. So it's within spec. So I'm going to go ahead and we're going to take all four of these beers we've sampled here, and we're going to give them our rating scale and finish this off. Okay, now that we have sampled all 4 of the beers in the Sweetwater Spring Sampler Pack, let's go ahead and give them all a rating. Rating goes on a 0 to 100 scale, and it's in 10 categories, 10 points each. So the very first beer we had here was the Sweetwater 420, which is an extra special bitter. This clocks in at 5.7% ABV. And for the ratings, aroma, I gave it a 7. Taste, I gave it a 5. It's just average. It's not great in terms of ESBs, but it's not bad beer. The body was a little lacking for me. It was still in average, but it just gets a 4 out of 10. Mouthfeel, very similar body, 4 out of 10. The finish, for an ESB, I kind of expect it to be a little more hop forward, a little more hop dominant, but it just wasn't. It finished fine, but just average, gets a 5. For the head and retention, it actually did quite well. It had a really nice, beautiful head that kept and held, which was perfect for the style, and it had nice, tight bubbles in there. So it really helped keep the head and give it longevity as you were enjoying the beer. Gets an 8 out of 10 there. For the appearance, beautiful beer. In terms of an ESB, actually had some really nice color to it. I gave it a 9 out of 10. Balance, give it a 6. Again, it's hovering in the average, but on the high end of average there. Pretty balanced ESB. Good overall, I would say. Now the feeling and the intangible that I get when I experience this beer, it's just average. This beer's not bad. It's not great. It's just average. It's just like many other ESB offerings out there. So it gets a 5. And finally, as an example of the style, similar to the feeling I got, it's wholly average. I give it a 5. Grand total on the 420 ESB is 58. And you'll have to excuse me, I keep calling it ESB. It's actually an extra pale ale. They're ridiculously similar. You would be hard-pressed to find anybody that could define the difference. But nonetheless, 58 out of 100 for the ESB. Moving on to the Sweetwater IPA. This is their standard go-to. This has been in every sampler pack I've ever had that Sweetwater's put out. It's Sweetwater's version of the Boston Lager if you buy sampler packs a lot. This one clocks in at 6.3% ABV. The aroma was very nice. I gave it a 7 out of 10. The taste, it's on the higher end of average. I gave it a 6. Same thing for the body. It gets a 6 out of 10. Mouthfeel again, 6 out of 10. Finish, 6 out of 10. Now the head and the retention on this one actually really good. Much like the extra pale ale here, it was able to keep a nice head. This is one of the better heads that formed for an IPA, 9 out of 10. The appearance, I like it to have a little more color, but it all comes down to the intensity and the different types of malts. But in terms of an IPA, I gave it a 7 out of 10. It's on the high end of average. The balance is actually really good. This is a very good, very well balanced beer. Gets an 8 out of 10 there. For the feeling and the intangibles I get when I experience it, just average, but on the higher end of average, I gave it a 6 out of 10. I've had many IPAs, but this one wholly in the upper end of average. And as an example of the style, very similar to the feeling I got, I gave it a 6. So that brings our grand total to 67 out of 100 for the Sweetwater IPA. Moving on to the 420 Strain G13 IPA. This is a new one from Sweetwater. This clocks in at 6% ABV, so a little lower ABV than their standard IPA, but this beer has a lot going for it. The aroma hit me out of the gate. It was very complex on the nose. I gave it an 8 out of 10. Taste, again, I was very pleasantly surprised. This one gets an 8 out of 10. The body was on the high end of average or the low end of exceptional. I gave it a 7 out of 10. It had some nice body to it. The mouthfeel, even better, 8 out of 10. Finish was beautiful. It was long. It was complex. It gave you a lot to think about while you were drinking this beer. I gave that an 8 out of 10. For the head and the retention, really good, nice tight bubbles. It held its own, 7 out of 10. The appearance, you know, it was rather deceiving, and it's probably, again, based on the various roasted levels of the malts they used. But in terms of looking at an IPA, I'd say, wow, that's pretty pale. It was average. I gave it a 5 out of 10. Overall, this beer, exceptionally balanced. It's exceptionally balanced. This is a really good new offering by Sweetwater. I do recommend this beer. 8 out of 10 for that one. The feeling and the intangibles. This one really did it for me. Again, I'm an admitted hophead, but I really enjoyed getting to dig into this beer. I gave it a 9 out of 10. It's just shy of perfect for me. It really nice beer. Very complex, a lot to think about. Finally, as an example of the style as an IPA, I gave it an 8 out of 10. I've had many IPAs I would pick over this, but this is a very solid new offering by Sweetwater. Definitely worth seeking out the sampler. I don't know if they sell this individually in 6-packs or 12-packs, but it's absolutely worth picking up the sampler pack if you enjoy IPAs, if not just for this beer alone. Grand total score, 76 out of 100. Okay, and for the last beer, the Peach, Love, and Happiness Berliner Weiße, that clocked in at 4.7% ABV. The aroma on this one, I would say, was pretty average. Not a very strong smell. You could just get a hint of peach, and you could just smell a little bit of the sour, but it wasn't overwhelmingly so. The taste, it was excellent. I would say this is easily above average. I had never personally had a peach version of this style, and it goes very well with this beer. I gave that an 8. The body, I gave it a 7. It had a little more substance than the average Berliner Weiße, and it wasn't overbearing. It just had a little more substance, so I gave that a 7 out of 10. Mouthfeel, you know, body and mouthfeel go often hand in hand, but the mouthfeel was actually slightly lower. It's average. I gave it a 6. For the finish, it was really nice. It was very complex and very layered. You got hit with the peach up front, and then it kind of subsided a little bit into the kind of hay and toast and biscuit. You got a lot of that just layering one after the other. I had a nice long finish, so I gave that a 7 out of 10. For the head and the retention, it was above average for the style. You know, when we're giving these rankings, it's all comparative to the style. So this one did very much what you'd expect, gets an 8 out of 10. Appearance, it was a lovely beer. Had a nice, it was light as you'd expect from Berliner Weiße, but it also had a little extra gold color in there, probably from the peach. It was a very beautiful beer, 8 out of 10. Exceptionally well balanced, just stacks and layers of flavors, nothing overwhelming. The sour wasn't overwhelming, the peach wasn't overwhelming. It was beautifully balanced, 8 out of 10. The feeling and intangible I got while experiencing this beer, above average. I really enjoyed it. Peach, I think goes very well with this beer style. Highly recommend anybody seeking this out. I give that an 8 out of 10. And finally, as an example of the style, I said a 7 out of 10. I've had some that kind of blew me away. This one was certainly above average, worth seeking out, but didn't completely knock my socks off. It's a good start, and it's worth it if you're a fan of the style. Grand total score on this one was a 72. So I hope that you got some value out of what these beers in this Sweetwater Spring Sampler Release Pack have to offer. Certainly if you found any value with the information here, please feel free to like and subscribe. There's going to be more coming. We're going to be dropping videos at least 2 times per week. Try to get on a regular schedule, digging in depth, trying all sorts of brews, all different styles, all different brewers. So we're going to keep you up to date on the current beers that are out in the marketplace, ready for you to enjoy. Any upcoming beer news, we're going to be coming out with a new series with home brewing equipment reviews, recipe ideas, kind of technique. Gonna run the whole gamut here, beer and food pairing. So there's a lot more to offer. So please stay tuned. And I do thank you for joining us today. And as always, keep it beer, keep it craft. Cheers.